There was a girl named Amina who lived in a small town with her parents and younger brother. She was 18 years old and had just finished school. Amina loved reading, especially love stories. She often sat by the window in the evenings, enjoying the breeze and imagining what her future might be like. She was a kind and shy girl who always smiled at others, even if she didn't know them very well. She lived a quiet life. Her world was small, but it felt big to her. The streets of her town were familiar, lined with trees, tiny shops, and a sound of bicycles in the evening. Every morning, Amina helped her mother in the kitchen, packed her brother's lunch, and then took time to read before starting her day. Books were her escape. Through them, she visited new places, met interesting people, and learned what love could feel like, even though she had never experienced it herself. In her heart, she often wondered what it would be like to fall in love. Not the kind shown in movies with loud music and dramatic moments, but the kind where two people just understand each other without trying too hard. Amina believed love should be gentle, like a quiet breeze that touches your skin when you least expect it. She never said this out loud, but she carried the thought with her every day. Her friends often joked that she lived in a dream. They liked loud music, late-night chats, and taking selfies. Amina liked watching people from a distance, listening to the birds in the morning, and writing her thoughts in a small diary she kept under her pillow. She wasn't lonely, but she was different, and she was okay with that. There was one boy she had noticed during her last year of school. His name was Zayan. He was in the same class, but sat a few rows away. He wasn't popular or loud. He didn't join in every joke or try to get attention. Instead, he walked quietly, spoke only when needed, and seemed to enjoy being alone. Amina had noticed him many times. She never spoke to him, but sometimes their eyes met for a second, and she quickly looked away. She didn't understand why she noticed him more than others. Maybe it was the way he seemed deep in thought, or how he always helped the teacher carry books without being asked. He never laughed loudly, but he had a calm smile that stayed in her mind long after the school day ended. Amina never told anyone about him, not even her best friend. It was her quiet secret, just like the poems she wrote, but never showed to anyone. One evening, while writing in her diary, she found herself writing his name without thinking. She smiled, closed the book gently, and whispered to herself that it was just a passing thought. But inside her heart, something had already begun. It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something warm, soft, and hopeful. Amina never had the courage to talk to Zayan while they were in school. She had wanted to many times, but fear always held her back. She wondered what she would even say to him and worried that he might not know her name. So instead, she just passed him in the hallway with a soft smile, secretly hoping that one day something might bring them together. After school ended, Amina moved to a college in the city. Life there was much busier and louder. The college was big. The classrooms were filled with new people, and everything felt different. Amina made new friends and worked hard to adjust to her new environment. She tried to forget Zion and the quiet feelings she used to have, but sometimes, especially during quiet evenings, her thoughts would drift back to him. Even in the noise of the city, some silences followed her. She would walk through crowded hallways, hear laughter echo across the campus, and still feel a strange emptiness she couldn't explain. It wasn't that she was unhappy. She was learning, growing, and slowly building a life for herself. But sometimes, in the quiet moments between classes or during her solitary walks back to the hostel, her mind would return to Zayan, the boy who had never spoken much, yet somehow had left behind an echo in her heart. Amina didn't tell anyone about him, not her roommates, not her new friends. It felt like a memory too delicate to explain. There were days she would sit in the college library, her books open in front of her, and wonder where he was now. Had he moved to another city? Was he in college too? Did he still write in that small notebook she once saw him carry? She had no answers, only small memories that would rise like gentle waves and then settle back into silence. To distract herself, she poured her energy into her studies. She joined a literature club, read poetry late at night, and even began writing short pieces of her own. Her professors noticed her thoughtfulness. Her classmates admired her kindness. But no one saw the part of her that still waited quietly for something she couldn't name. Then, one weekend, something unexpected happened. A notice about a local book fair was put up on a campus board. Amina's heart fluttered at the thought. She had always loved book fairs, the smell of old paper, the rows of stories waiting to be discovered. It reminded her of home. On the day of the fair, she dressed simply, took a small bag, and walked alone to the event, not knowing that this visit would change everything. One weekend, Amina visited a book fair with her college friends. The place was crowded and filled with the sounds of happy people, the smell of food, and the sight of books stacked on every table. While browsing near a poetry stall, she suddenly heard someone softly call her name. When she turned around, she was surprised to see Zayan standing there, holding a book in his hand. Zayan looked the same as before, calm, quiet, and thoughtful. Amina was surprised but happy to see him again. He told her he had recognized her and wasn't sure if she would remember him. She did, of course, and was happy that he had spoken to her first. They began walking through the book fair together, slowly catching up on everything that had happened since school ended. As they walked through the colorful stalls, surrounded by the smell of fresh paper and old books, Amina felt a strange mix of calm and excitement. It was the first time she had spoken to Zayan properly, and yet it didn't feel awkward. The silence between them was comfortable, like they had known each other quietly for years. They stopped at a poetry corner. Zayan picked up a book and flipped through the pages slowly, as if searching for something special. Amina noticed how carefully he read the words. He seemed to read not just with his eyes, but with his heart. She realized then that he hadn't changed much. He was still the boy who looked out the window during class, thinking quietly while the world rushed by. They talked about their college life, their favorite books, and what they missed about school. Zayan said he still wrote sometimes, mostly poems, though he never shared them with anyone. Amina, with a gentle smile, told him she had once dreamed of being a writer too. They both laughed softly, surprised by how easily their thoughts matched. As they continued to walk, Amina noticed how natural it felt to be beside him. She wasn't shy like before. Her words came freely, as if they had been waiting to be spoken for years. Zion listened carefully, nodding slowly, sometimes adding a short sentence that showed he understood more than he said. Before they left the fair, they both bought the same book, an old collection of Urdu poems. It felt like a small memory they could take home, a quiet reminder of the day. When it was time to leave, they didn't make any promises or plans. But something had shifted. A bridge had been built between them, not loud or rushed, but steady and honest. That night, as Amina sat by her window with the book in her lap, she couldn't stop thinking about their meeting. She replayed their conversation in her mind, smiling to herself every few minutes. For the first time in a long while, she felt like something beautiful had begun, something real, something slow, and something worth waiting for. As they talked, they discovered they shared many things in common. They both loved books and poetry. Zayan spoke about how he wanted to write, and Amina shared her dream of becoming a teacher. That day felt peaceful and special, as if time had stopped just for them. A connection had begun to form between the two, something soft and unspoken, but very real. After that day, Amina and Zayan started meeting regularly. They met at the city library, small bookshops, and sometimes at a quiet tea shop near her college. Each time they met, their friendship grew deeper. There were no big romantic gestures or loud feelings, just comfort, time, and gentle understanding. Amina had never felt more herself around anyone else. One evening, while sitting under a large tree in the park, they shared an umbrella during a light rain. Amina told Zayn about how she used to watch him in school, but never had the courage to speak to him. Zayn was surprised, and he told her that he had always noticed her smile back then, and had often wondered how someone could smile so kindly every single day. In that quiet moment, they both began to realize that what they shared was more than just friendship. There were no dramatic words, no declarations of love, only the soft, honest knowledge that they cared deeply for each other. After that evening, something quiet but strong began to change between them. They still met in the same places, the tea shop with its gentle music, the library with its wooden chairs, the park where the leaves danced in the breeze. But now there was a new kind of warmth in their silences. When Amina spoke, Zayan listened with even more care. When he looked at her, it was no longer just with curiosity, it was with affection, though he never said it aloud. Their conversations grew deeper. They spoke not only about books and dreams, but about fears and memories too. Amina told him how she used to feel invisible in a room full of people, and how books had always made her feel seen. Zayan shared that he had always found it hard to express himself in front of others, but writing made him feel free. These confessions didn't scare them. Instead, they pulled them closer, two quiet hearts slowly opening up to one another. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Seasons changed around them, but the rhythm of their connection remained the same, calm, patient, and steady. Sometimes they didn't even need to speak. Sitting side by side, sipping tea or reading the same page from two different copies of a book, they felt more connected than many people do after years. Amina often wrote in her diary after their meetings. She didn't call it love, not yet. But in her pages, she described a feeling that was tender and growing, something that gave her comfort, even on days when everything else felt uncertain. She didn't know if Zayan felt the same way, but she didn't feel the need to ask. It was enough to sit beside him and share the kind of silence that felt full, not empty. Zayan, on his part, had started writing more than ever. His poems had changed. They had once been lonely, full of waiting and winter. Now they carried warmth, gentle mornings, smiles, and the sound of footsteps beside his own. He didn't tell Amina that she was in every line, but anyone reading could have guessed. They never rushed anything. There were no big declarations, no dramatic promises. But with each meeting, each glance, and each thoughtful gesture, they were writing a quiet love story, one that didn't need to be told aloud to be understood. In the months that followed, their bond continued to grow. They supported one another during tough exams, encouraged each other during stressful times, and celebrated even the smallest of achievements. One day, Zayan gifted Amina a small notebook. Inside the first page was a poem he had written for her. The words described her smile, her warmth, and how she had brought light into his life. Amina was moved to tears. She didn't need to say anything because the emotions on her face spoke clearly. That was the day she realized she was truly in love with him, and he felt the same. Years passed. Amina became a teacher, and Zayan became a published poet. They grew in their own careers, but they continued to grow together as well. Their love had been quiet from the beginning. No drama, no shouting, just a steady, strong connection that never broke. One day, they returned to the same tree where they had once sat during the rain. The world had changed around them, but their love had remained soft and strong. Now, they held books in their hands, just like they had during their first meeting at the book fair. The memories of their journey lived in every look, every smile, and every shared silence. Their story wasn't a loud one. It wasn't filled with dramatic twists, but it was real, beautiful, and full of quiet magic. Amina had once been the girl who smiled from afar, and Zayan had been the boy who said little but felt deeply. In the end, what brought them together wasn't just chance. It was kindness, patience, and love that waited until the time was right. After that visit to the tree, Amina and Zayan began planning a life together. Their families were supportive and happy. Amina's parents had always liked Zayan, especially because of his respectful behavior and thoughtful nature. Zayan's family had heard about Amina from him for years, and when they finally met her, they saw exactly why she had meant so much to him. The wedding was a small, beautiful ceremony in their hometown. It was filled with flowers, poetry, and music. Amina wore a simple dress, and Zayan carried a handwritten poem in his pocket. He had written it the night before, and although he didn't read it out loud to everyone, he gave it to Amina as a gift. It was the story of their love in a few soft lines, and it made her heart full. They moved into a small apartment not far from the school where Amina taught. Their life was not grand, but it was peaceful and full of love. Mornings started with tea, gentle conversations, and shared silence. Zayan wrote during the day and sometimes read his work to Amina when she returned from school. She would sit by the window, listening, just like she used to during her teenage years. On weekends, they still went to bookshops and libraries. They had a corner in their home filled with books, photographs, and small memories, movie tickets, dried flowers, and letters. Everything reminded them of their journey. Sometimes they laughed at how shy they had been, how long it had taken for them to speak their hearts. But they both believed the timing had been perfect. They didn't need constant excitement to feel happy. A simple walk in the park, a quiet dinner at home, or reading side by side was enough. Their relationship was built on deep trust, gentle care, and mutual respect. They never tried to change each other. They simply loved who the other person already was. As time passed, they became even closer. Amina faced tough days at work sometimes, and Zayan always knew how to comfort her without many words. He would make her favorite tea, play soft music, or give her space to rest. When Zayan faced writer's block or stress, Amina would remind him why he started writing in the first place. Her belief in him never wavered. Years later, they welcomed a daughter into their lives. They named her Noor, which means light. She brought a new kind of joy into their world. Amina would read bedtime stories to Noor, while Zayan wrote poems about her laughter and innocence. They raised her with the same kindness and patience they had given to each other. Noor grew up surrounded by books, stories, and love. She often asked how her parents met, and they would tell her a softer version of their story, one filled with hope, shyness, and gentle love. She would listen with wide eyes, imagining the book fair, the tea shop, and the rainy tree. Even as they grew older, Amina and Zayan continued to be each other's peace. They didn't need big vacations or expensive gifts. Their love was in the little things: a handwritten note, a quiet breakfast, or a long walk in silence. They remained best friends and companions, just as they had always been. One evening, many years later, they returned once more to that tree in the park. They sat under it, watching the sky change colors. Their hands, older now, were still tightly held. It had been decades, but their hearts had stayed young, soft, and full of love. As they sat in silence, the rustling of leaves above them sounded almost like whispers from the past. The same branches that once sheltered their younger selves still stood strong, though older, just like them. They looked around and smiled softly, remembering the first rain they had shared here, the day when no confessions were made, but everything had been felt. It was this place where their story had quietly begun. And now it felt like the perfect place to pause and reflect on how far they had come. Amina glanced at Zayan's face, lined now with age, but filled with the same kindness. His eyes still held that thoughtful calm she had noticed back in school. And in those eyes, she saw every moment they had lived: the late-night talks, the struggles of raising their daughter, the quiet evenings spent in their small home filled with books and warmth. She thought of the times he had waited for her after a long day of work with a cup of tea, and how she had stood by him through every chapter of his writing journey. Zayan, too, looked at Amina with quiet wonder. Her hair had turned silver in places. Her movements were slower now, but her presence remained just as soft and steady as ever. She had always been his safe place, his listener, his encourager, his peace. He thought of how she had read every poem he wrote, even the ones he never published. She had believed in him when he didn't, and that belief had been his greatest gift. Between them now lay a photo album, one they had brought along that day. They opened it slowly, page by page. Each photo held a story: Noor's first steps, old books with dates written in the corner, silly moments captured during simple days. They smiled and sometimes laughed, their voices soft with time. They didn't speak much, but they didn't need to. Every photo was a word, and every memory was a sentence in the quiet book of their life. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in orange and gold. Amina rested her head gently on Zayan's shoulder. There was nothing left to wish for. Their love had never been about chasing perfection. It had always been about holding on through storms, growing slowly like a tree, and being grateful for each ordinary day spent together. And in that golden hour, under the same old tree, they sat in perfect stillness, two hearts that had once found each other through a smile, a poem, and a little bit of courage. A love that never needed noise to be real. A love that lasted not because of grand moments, but because of countless quiet ones that stitched their souls together. Their story was a quiet one, but in that quietness lived a beautiful truth, that real love doesn't need to shout. It grows slowly, gently, and becomes a part of who you are. Amina and Zayan had built a life out of words, smiles, and silence. A love that waited, stayed, and lasted forever.